Hi all, welcome to Cyber Warfare Labs AWS Cloud Red Team course. In this module, we will discuss about different security services provided by AWS. So these are the services we will discuss how we can protect our infrastructure, our application, our platform by using these security services. So we will discuss about AWS CloudTrail. We will discuss about AWS Shield, Web Application Firewall, Inspector, as well as Guard Duty. So each and every service we will discuss and we will think about the scenario, because you should, while doing a red team operation, you should also understand about the blue team perspective, how a security operations center team can detect your activities. What are the way you can bypass this thing? So before going for the bypassing, we should understand about what are the security services AWS have and what functionality they provide. So first we'll discuss about AWS CloudTrail. So AWS CloudTrail is basically a log monitoring services which allow us to continuously monitoring and retain account activity related to action across our AWS infrastructure. CloudTrail provide event history for our AWS account activity, including action taken through AWS Management Console, AWS SDK, command line tools, and other services. So it's basically whatever actions you are doing there in AWS account will be monitored by CloudTrail. The action you can do by management console using UI, you can do by AWS SDK, CLI, as well as other AWS services. So whatever API you called, either it's a read, get, or write APIs, it will be logged there in AWS CloudTrail. We can also use the CloudTrail to detect unusual activities in our AWS account. So this is a really important services. We can collect this log, we can understand about what person and what user and what role, what they are doing it, who are using the root user access key, who are doing what type of suppose there is one user who is doing any write operations, they are using the write APIs. So this is the way you can identify, and this is the services which allow you to monitor the logs continuously. So you can see how it's look like. So basically AWS CloudTrail is divided into three sections. First thing, we are collecting the log. So log collections, where we are collecting the log. So we are collecting the log from different AWS services, or we can say event. It's like if you are doing any API call using AWS CLI, what is happening in the background? Basically, suppose if you're creating any new EC2 instance, so you use EC2 services. So there is one event is already created when you call the API that you have to launch this instance. So then all this thing will be you can collect these log from the API, or we can say AWS services. This is the first thing. Second thing is log storage. So definitely CloudTrail can't store much log, so you have to store the log for any future purpose, or you can download this log, or you can export the log in your SIM solutions. So you have to create a trail. So trail basically where you want to store your log. So AWS provide, or CloudTrail provide, a way to store your log in S3 buckets. So suppose if there is a the size is exceed, or the time is exceed, the log is automatically will be updated there, or will be stored there in S3 bucket. Third one is how we can search the log. So you have to create the insights. Insight basically checking for the any write API. Is there any write operation is happening, or is there any malicious API which is doing any write call? So you can check, or you can search for those logs using insights. So let's see how it's look like practically. So I just logged into my AWS Management Console. You can search for CloudTrail. So basically track user activity in API uses. So what are the API we can use? So it will be logged each and every API. Let's see. So basically it's divided into three sections. One is where we collecting the log, where we storing the log, or how we can go and search this thing. So the first thing is this one, dashboard. So you can see here in dashboard there is a three things. One is trail, one is insight, and third one is event history. So when you go for event history, it will be show you all the logs. So it will show you all the logs which is there. This is basically search for the logs. So you can search the log. Suppose someone update this function, someone did this update function operation. Let's see what function they did it, how they call the API, what is the source IP, and who did this thing. So you can see here, this is the user, this is the operations, this is the CLI they use. So they use this CLI, this is the operating system where the CLI is stored. All these things you can see here. This is all the API call you can see here. So it's basically searching for the logs or searching for the logs. You can store the logs, so you have to create that trail. So suppose this is the trail I created. It will store the logs there in this particular S3 bucket. So you have to define the buckets where you want to store the log. So you can see here, it will be basically stored in this bucket. So I think you can collect the log. How you can collect the log? You can collect the log in different AWS services in form of event, or basically API call. You can store the log by creating the trail, and you can see via creating the insight or event history. So event also provide you to search the log, but you can also create the insights. Let's see how its insights look like. So basically what is this? So insight are events, basically event that we saw. So unusual write APIs. So it's basically only see the write API activities which is happening there. So it will logged in here, and you can see all these things within the 90 days. And you can, if you want to search for the log, you can see here. You can see what type of log you want to search. Event ID, you have to you can specify the event ID, and you can search for those event ID. You can search the access key. You can also specify the access key. So you can customize, or you can filter out the logs. But this is the dashboard which is giving this type of result. You can also specify the time set, 1 hour, 3 hour, half an hour, 30 minutes. So this is how you can identify all the logs or all the API uses. So this is a really important. You can use this facility. Suppose you can store the logs there in S3 bucket, and you can also export these logs to your SIM solutions. So Cloud Trail is really important, and it's give you the better idea about what operation, who did it, what user agent they use, and what is the user who did this operation, or what are the key ID is used to perform these operations. You can check all these things. So either it's done by management console, done by SDK, command line tool, or any other services. So suppose there is one services which is calling to the another services, then only it will be logged all the API call which is happening there, all the events basically. And this is how Cloud Trail is look like. For a red team operation, it's really important to understand about. So by default it will track all the APIs. So there is no need to activate this one. This services by default will be activated for each and every account, and they will be logged for all the operation you did it. But there may be chance that they not configure the trails. There may be chance, but so there is a time limit. For the particular time or particular amount is exceed, all the previous logs will be deleted. If they have any SIM solutions, or they created a trail, they can store the logs there. So that will also help them to understand about who did this thing, what source IP they used to perform these operations. So this is how we can say Cloud Trail is important for security point of view. For a red team point of view, you should understand about if you use this particular API, how they're gonna detect it. So you have to craft, or you have to use your operation such like that it won't detect any malicious activities there. So this is how you can use Cloud Trail to secure your AWS infrastructure. Now let's go for a second services we have. We have a AWS Shield. So basically AWS Shield standard defends against most common frequently occurring network and transport layer. So it's basically protect from the DDoS attacks. So there is a two type of AWS Shield generally AWS have. One is standard You can see here I'm just looking for AWS Shield. Let's click in AWS Shield. I'm going for AWS Shield. So basically it's protect from DDoS attack. So there is a two type of shield. One is a standard and second one is advanced. So by default, standard will be there for each and every services provided by AWS. If you want to use advanced, you have to pay the extra money. So this is the money, this is the amount you have to pay for protect. And if you're going for a advanced services for AWS Shield, so you can see it's protect your cloud front, it's protect your route DNS services, it's protect your load balancer, as well as it's protect your EC2 instance. So you can put the shield in front of these things. By default, standard will be there. So AWS Shield standard version will by default enable for each and every services. But if you're going for advanced one, you can protect these services by DDoS attacks. So basically it's work on the network as well as transport layer. So you can protect different services by AWS Shield. So it's basically, it's won't much use for your red team operation, but basically it's protect the organization from any kind of, distributed denial of service attack. So let's move to the next services. Next services we have web application firewall, and it is really important for even your red team operations, because sometimes you found that there is one RCE and you compromise the web applications to getting the initial access on EC2 instance, container, as well as Lambda function, but there is already firewall, web application firewall is already deployed, who can activate or you can track your malicious activities. So basically what it does is basically web application firewall that's let you monitor the HTTP request that are forwarded. So that basically it's monitor your HTTP and HTTPS request to see if there is any malicious traffic is going on. So it's protect basically CloudFront, API gateway, application load balancer, AWS apps in GraphQL APIs. So basically it's work on the application layer. It's only protect the application layer. It's only inspect the HTTP and HTTPS traffic. So you can see here, if you're going down, so suppose you have an API gateway. In front of API gateway, you are using the CloudFront CDN. So you can protect this CDN or using AWS WAF. So you can put the WAF between your client and your CloudFront. So whatever request is coming from this user or this client will be analyzed by AWS WAF. You can directly put the WAF in front of API gateway if you are not using any CDN. But basically it's protect the basically web-based attack. If there is web application attack is happening, it protect it. So you have to configure the rules set. Let's see how it's look like. So let's search for web. So this is a WAF. It's basically web application firewall. So you can create the ACL, and these are the charges it's basically applied. So you can create the ACL, you create the IP set. So what is the trusted IP and what is the IP is blocked IP. So basically if traffic is coming from this IP, it will be blocked on the WAF level. So this is how you can create the regex also pattern, or you can create the pattern. Basically, suppose if anybody doing any SQL injection type of vulnerability or anybody doing any remote code executions, you can create the regex, so that if the WAF found this kind of pattern, they will be blocked on the first end. So you can create the regex, you can create the ACLS. So there is a lot more thing you can do by WAF. So basically, it's protect your application from by inspecting the HTTP traffic by any web application exploitation or vulnerability which is there in web applications. And it is really important for our red team operation also, because for getting the initial access we can use or we can exploit this web application. So if you're going to exploit it, and if there is a web, so you should understand about how we can bypass the web. So this is a really important. So this is the services which generally a lot of organization is using, and it's depend upon how they set up their web application firewall, either directly in front of CloudFront or directly in front of API gateways. So this is how you can protect your applications in your web. Fourth one, we are looking for AWS Inspector. So we discuss about how we can protect our APIs or the accessibilities. We discuss about how we can protect our application or our network. So basically, when we're talking about application or network, you can use the shield as well as web. Shield protect from DDoS attack, web protect from web application. Firewall basically is protect on the application layer. Shield protect from network layer as well as transport layer. Now what about the platform? Suppose you are using EC2 instance, or if there any web application, how you can perform the dynamic analysis of those applications, security analysis basically on the platform where this application is hosted, as well as the code which is there in the application. So that you can use the AWS Inspector. So it's basically automated security assessment service that helps improve the security and compliance of application deployed on AWS. So it's basically, we have an inspector agent which we installed on EC2 instance. Suppose there is one application which is running on the EC2 instance, you can deploy the inspector agent there in EC2 instance. So it will perform the security assessment of instance itself, that means the platform where application is hosted, as well as it will also perform the security assessment or the application itself. So basically it's protect both application as well as platform where your application is hosted. And it's basically on demand, so you can perform the security assessment, it will give you the result. The inspector agent monitor the behavior of EC2 instance, including network, file system and process activity. Yeah, this is really important because for a red team operation, suppose if they are using the inspector, you compromised one web application which is running there in EC2 instance. Now there may be case if you perform any remote code execution, you can bypass the firewall, web application firewall. But if you going to execute any operating system level command, it will be detected by this inspector. So for your red team operation, it's really important. While doing your enumeration, you should check if they are using any inspector services and how many instances are there they deploy this agent. So the inspector agent perform vulnerability assessment of application deployed on EC2 instance as well as the instance itself. So you can see here there is one EC2 instance. You have to deploy the agent there. So this is the inspector services. You can request for vulnerability assessment of the platform, the EC2 instance itself, as well as the application which is running on this instance. So it will give you the result. So this is how you can perform the vulnerability assessment of EC2 instance and application running on the same instance. So this is a really important for our red teaming operations. So you should be aware about what our services the organization is using, which are the we can say instances where they have inspector. So while doing a remote code execution, or while exfiltrate any data from those devices, you should be aware about this thing. So let's see how the inspectors look like practically. So you have to use this is the inspector analyze application security. Okay, so basically, yeah, you have to deploy the agent on EC2 instance. Whenever you want, you can run. You can also schedule it. So at the particular time, it will be automatically, execute the operations, and you can review the findings, whatever security findings they have, you can review it. So it's work on the 3 phases. But it's really important to understand about how this will help you to protect your organization. But for as a red teamers, we should understand about how it will help the blue team to detect our activities. So you should be aware about if there is a inspector is deployed here, you should be executed the command on operating system level in a such a manner that our inspector won't detect our activities. Okay, so these are the 4 services we discussed. Now the last one is a duty guard. So it's basically threat detection services. It's a guard duty basically. It's a threat detection services that continuously monitoring for malicious activity and unauthorized behavior to protect your AWS account, workload and data stored in Amazon S3. So you can see there is a duty guard, which is basically threat detection services, which will monitor, which will collect the logs. So it works in the same like 3 ways: log collection, log analysis, and visualizations. So this is using these source where this collecting the log. First one is collect the log from VPC flow, that means EC2 instance, or they are communicating to each other internet gateway, and all these things they are collecting the log. Second thing, this service is collecting the log from CloudTrail. Just like we saw, it's collecting the APIs who are going to access it and what user ID they use. If they found is malicious, you can see here it will be visualized here. Then it's collecting the logs from DNS. So suppose your EC2 instance tried to connect to any phishing DNS server, it will be log will be collecting by DNS logs storage, and you can see if is there any malicious DNS they found, they will be visualized here. It also collects the logs from S3 events. So suppose if anybody is doing the put operation or anybody doing the get operations, all the logs will be here. It will basically analyze all the logs collecting from these sources, and if they found any malicious activity, they will be alert here in this dashboard. So there is a one visualization dashboard. You can see if there is any finding, if this found any malicious activity, this will only show the malicious activity. When you're going for a VPC log, CloudTrail log, they have all the logs which is there. Just like CloudTrail, they have all the logs for whatever operation is happening, but whatever malicious is there, this AWS guard duty will analyze it and will visualize it. So let's see how it's look like, and it is really important for your red team operation, because each and every most of the services they are using the guard duties, AWS service to detect any malicious activity within the AWS accounts. You can also so there is one service called AWS organizations. It's basically if you have one organization and if you have a multiple account, you can collect all the account. You can merge all the account to a single account. That means you can connect all the account to a single account, and single account will handle your all the logs, as well as the guard duty will analyze. It will basically work as a centralized for your all the account. So you can see all the activity from a single guard duty account. So let's see how it's look like. So this is the guard duty. This is the one we are talking about, AWS organization. Suppose you have multiple accounts, like one account for development team, one account for production team, one account for testing team, and you can connect all this account to a single account, and you can see all the activity, all the alert using a single account. So this is how you can look like. So you can see here, this is the dashboard of guard duty. There is currently 73 findings which have, out of which 25 is low severity, 29 is medium severity, and 19 are higher severity. So currently I have a sample logs. You can see here these are the higher severity. How we can define it? So when you're going for the resource, let's check the resource. So this is access key related. Somebody used the root key, so you can see here somebody used the root key. This is the bucket related. We collect the log from these buckets. These are the log we collected from the instance. Like if somebody did the port scan, if somebody did this denial of service for this UDP or TCP, somebody did RDP brute force. Let's click here. you can see here it's a low severity, the region which is coming from here, this is the account ID, when this log is created or when is the alert is created. It's basically alert, it's not a log. So it's basically analyze the log and create an alert. So there are 73 alerts here. This is the what did the source, IP, launch time, port, and all this thing you can see. Just like there is a SIM solution you have. Public IP, this is a public IP they use. So it's basically sample file or sample alerts, but you can use the actual alert which is there. Suppose I'm looking for this one. Somebody using root credentials, because by default there is one requirement, or we can say there is one best practice that you have to disable the keys from for the root users, because root user is only they create the root user for the billing purpose itself. You no need to create the access key for the root user, which is not a best practice. If you do this thing, it will showing as a alert. Destination public, this is the real alert which I got. It's not a sample alert. When it's created, somebody did the API call. This is how they did it. And what are the source IP where this API call is made by the source IP. So this is how you can identify how duty guard is collecting the log, what operation they are doing, and how they visualize the log. So this is basically visualizations. It's collecting the log. When you go for a usage, you can see where it's collecting the log. So it's collecting the log from the CloudTrail, it's collecting the log from the VPC flow logs, it's collecting the log from DNS as well as S3. So you can also see the resources that we already discussed. It's coming from the bucket, it's coming from the instance, it's coming from the root or the resources or API call basically. So this is how you can define the permissions here. This is the unique ID for each and every account, every guard duty account. If you are using these services, you can export the log or export the findings. So basically it's a finding, so you can export this finding to S3 bucket. You can also define source IP as well as source IP, trusted source IP. If your request is coming from this one, no need to generate any alert from these IP. You can also define the blocked IP, or we can say threat IP. If any request is coming, whatever operation they did, you can generate the logs here. This is how you can define the IPs. You can define the protection if you want to protect the S3. If anything is happening on the S3, you can define it, and you can create a multiple account. So basically, if you have organizations, you can you can attach the multiple account, and you can see the finding here in single dashboard. You can also send this thing to your any SIM solution you have, just like Sumo Logic or any other SIM solution you are using. You can also transfer the log there. So this is how duty guard will help us to protect organizations. It's basically detection engine, but as a red teamers, there is multiple way we can bypass it. So we have to first understand about what is the source they are collecting the logs, how they are generating the logs, and how we can bypass those kind of alerts generating from those logs. So you should first understand about how the logs is generated, then we'll understand about if we use any other method, it won't seems like malicious, so it won't generate any alert. So this is how we discuss about where we collecting the logs, where we analyzing the log, and how we can visualize the log. So these are the basically AWS security services. For a red teamers, you should understand about the basic services used by organizations, and our advanced just like when we releasing our advanced course for red teamers, we have to identify, or we have to understand about how we can bypass the security solutions, either web, either CloudTrail, or either duty guards. basically guard duty, sorry. So how we can bypass those security solutions. But in this module we should only understand about what are the solutions have there in AWS account, from where they are collecting the log, how they are analyzing the log, and what are the different methods, or how we can enumerate that those services is used by a particular account where we are doing any red team operations. So there is a multiple way you can use these security solutions for your red team operations. So this is all about this video. Thank you so much for watching this video.